Hello again, class. It's great to see you all. And here we are going into the next week where we're really going to jump straight into thinking about the very first type of therapy that we're going to get into a little bit of depth with. So, person centered therapy is going to be the very first one that we're going to really sort of discuss in depth. So, I want you to keep in mind all of the things that we've discussed so far, the common factors of therapy, the building blocks that make it something that can either be supportive or not very supportive based on what a counselor brings to session. But now we're really going to start looking into what the specific types of counseling or therapeutic interventions can offer our clients as well. So, person centered therapy, also known as client centered therapy, is going to be the first one because this one in particular is really foundational for a lot of different therapeutic aspects. So, that's where we're going to start. When it comes to person centered therapy, one of the big things that Carl Rogers, the creator of this type of therapy, will talk about is conditions of worth. You'll see this in your readings this week as well. And conditions of worth is really something that kind of impacts all of us, according to Carl Rogers. And conditions of worth come from everywhere. And what these conditions of worth are really statements from things or people or institutions, things in the environment that sort of say, if you want to be a successful human being, you have to act a certain way. So there's this kind of like outside pressure on individuals to be a certain type of person, react to things in a certain type of way, and then you will be quote unquote successful. And so this comes from all different sort of sources. It comes from work, it comes from our family, it comes from our school, academic institutions, it comes from people that we're dating or people we're married to. It comes from everywhere. These expectations about how you're supposed to be in order to be considered a successful human being. So when that pressure is applied to people, you can sort of get an idea of someone might sort of gravitate towards, thinking, well, I better act a certain way or I better behave a certain way because I want to be a successful person. So people might start reacting to situations or behaving in a certain type of way that more aligns with the pressure or with the things they're being told from the people in their environment rather than what they truly want to be. So, an example of this could be that someone might really want to be an artist. They are just love art, they love the creative aspect of it. But if everyone in their life is telling them, you can't be an artist, that's not the way to be successful, you have to do something more practical, you better be an accountant, you better be a lawyer, you better be one of these other types of careers so that you can be a successful human being. You can sort of see the push and pull there, right? A lot of people might gravitate towards like, well, I better get that type of career. I better be a lawyer. I better be an accountant. I better be this type of thing because everyone else around me is telling me that's what success looks like. But internally, that person is really dying to be an artist because that's what they feel like they're really being called to do. So here's this sort of like split, right? What I'm doing in order to be a successful person based on the pressure around me versus what I really truly want to be. And now I'm not that. And you can see how that's going to lead to sort of feelings of dissatisfaction with a person's life. Carl Rogers identified this as something that causes a lot of strife with a lot of individuals. And so he created a therapy that gets directly at this in terms of how he interacts with clients. So you can sort of tell if we're focused on the conditions of worth in a person's life, we're also really going to be focused on the environment because the environment, it has a huge impact on what people do and how they feel about themselves in life. So this type of therapy, it's not so much about fixing the person. We're more focused on how do we create an environment that's going to help a person really get in touch with who they truly are. And if a person's able to get in touch with who they are, then they're more likely to make steps towards a type of life that they're truly happy with. But we've got to get rid of all of those conditions of worth that are creating this unnecessary pressure on our clients so that they can really understand who they are inside. So we got some tools that we're going to use. Unconditional positive regard is one of the ones you're going to learn about. This is a staple of person-centered therapy. Unconditional positive regard is about seeing the person for who they are and not judging them for whatever they bring to the table. If we're judging a client by what we feel like is a good attribute or a not so good attribute, we're not doing anything other than contributing to those conditions of worth. We're sort of telling the client, this is good and this is bad, rather than listening to where the client is and appreciating them for who they are. So unconditional positive regard, whatever the client brings into session, I'm going to hear, I'm going to understand, and I'm going to accept you for who you are and where you're at right now. We're going to be authentic in session. It doesn't do the client any good for you as the counselor to try to pretend to be something that you're not. So you showing up authentically and being your true self is going to encourage the client to do the same. Being genuine with your responses, being genuinely supportive, genuinely wanting the best for the person across from you. It's not just putting on an act to hear and accept the person. You have to really want to do it because according to Carl Rogers, your clients are going to feel that genuineness or lack of genuineness if that's how you're showing up. Being congruent as well. I want the things that I do and say to be congruent with the type of person I want to be. So again, we do that as counselors and we want to encourage that from our clients. If you're saying you want to be an artist, then what are you doing to encourage that sort of artistic part of yourself in your everyday life? It's important to have your actions match who you actually are. And then being empathetic is huge in this type of therapy. Empathy is very different from sympathy. We'll get into that in just a second. But being empathetic and really hearing and understanding our clients is just core to what this therapy is all about. So if we create these sort of like elements in the therapy room, we're going to create a supportive atmosphere that is going to help our clients grow and develop into their best selves. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not fixing a client. We're not trying to tell our client what they're doing right and wrong. We are hearing our client, appreciating who they are, and ultimately creating an environment where they can show up and grow in whatever direction they need to grow in. But if we create the environment, the client will be freed to be the type of person that they truly are. So we're going for environment with this type of therapy. Carl Rogers, this is a picture of him. And so just a little bit about how he really believed to interact with clients. He's got some terrific quotes that sort of summarize what we've talked about so far. And these are two of my favorites. The first says, in my early professional years, I was asking the question, how can I treat or cure or change this person? Now I would phrase the question in this way. How can I provide a relationship which this person may use for his or her own personal growth? That type of sort of statement sort of captures the environmental sort of impact that Carl Rogers wanted to create. He's not changing a person. He's seeing them, appreciating them, and showing up in a way that's going to help them grow and develop in a way that's going to be ultimately in the biggest benefit for who they are. And one of my other all-time favorite quotes from Carl Rogers is, people are just as wonderful as sunsets if you let them be. When I look at a sunset, I don't find myself saying, soften the orange a bit on the right-hand corner. I don't try to control a sunset. I watch it with awe as it unfolds. So that really cuts to how he viewed his clients. He wants to view and see his clients for who they are and appreciate them for the type of person they are. He's not there to correct or to critique the person sitting across from him. He really viewed his job as being one of, I need to see you for who you are, really understand what type of person you are, and ultimately appreciate the uniqueness of the person sitting across from me. I love these quotes, so just wanted to share those with you as well. So in terms of skills then, so we're talking about creating an environment, incorporating unconditional positive regard, congruence, some of those factors that make an environment really helpful for our clients. But what does that really look like when you sit down with a client as a therapist? And the skill that you're going to use with person-centered therapy over and above any other skill is going to be reflecting. Reflecting is the skill that is going to help you understand your client, appreciate who they are, hear what they're bringing into session, and ultimately be in the position of being able to appreciate that person without trying to push them in one direction or another. So reflecting, that's the skill that you're going to be using over and over and over again if you're going to be a person-centered therapist. And so what does reflecting really look like? Well, it's a little different than just putting a statement out there. So an example might be, on one hand, you could say something like, you should probably quit your job and look for something else that pays a higher salary. I think your life would be a lot better if you made more money. So if I were to say that as a therapist, you can get a sense like, I'm coming into this therapy session with sort of an idea of what I think this client should do. You need to quit your job. You need to look for more money, because if you make more money, your life will be better. I'm essentially dictating to the client what I believe they should do. And so I'm prescribing that to the person sitting across from me. That's not reflecting. And that certainly is not creating an environment where I'm appreciating what the client wants. This is what I think the client needs. And so that's a great example of creating a condition of worth for the client. I'm adding to that outside pressure, and I'm not really understanding. I'm not showing that I really hear the client and I understand where they're coming from. So that's not a really terrific reflection, and it's certainly not going to align with what a person-centered therapist is ultimately there to do. A better way to phrase that, that's more like reflecting, would be something like, I can see that this is a tough decision. You want to find a different career, but you're really scared about the prospect of finding a new job. That is a great reflection, because it has nothing to do with me. I'm not telling the client that they need to find a new job or they should stay with the job that they currently have. I'm hearing where they're coming from. I'm telling the client that I can see that this is a struggle for them. I can see that they're feeling scared about trying to go out and find a new job. I can hear that that's where they're coming from. So I'm not telling the client what to do. I'm not saying the client should choose A or choose B. I'm showing that I heard that you're scared. I heard that this is difficult for you. And I'm showing you that I heard those things by essentially internalizing them and giving it back to you. That's what reflecting really is. So that would be a way to show my client, I hear you, I understand you, I appreciate you, but I'm certainly not going to tell you what's right and wrong, because that's not my place as a person-centered therapist. My place is to hear you, appreciate you, and support you. And that's what reflecting is going to allow you to do with your clients with this type of therapy. So just wanted to put that out there. You're probably going to hear a lot of reflecting when it comes to the video that I'd like you to watch this week that showcases person-centered therapy. So as far as assignments for this week, I know this is going to be utterly heartbreaking for all of you, but there are no assignments that are due this week. So why don't you keep that in mind? I'm not going to ask you to turn in anything with person-centered therapy, but there are a couple things I'd like you to do in lieu of turning in an official assignment. So first of all, I want you to keep an eye on the demonstration video, and I really want you to think about how many reflections am I hearing from the person who's the counselor. Just go ahead and keep like a running tally, like a piece of scrap paper would be fine. How many reflections am I counting that the counselor is using in this video? You'd be surprised just how many reflections a counselor can use when it comes to using person-centered therapy. So go ahead and just keep an eye on that. And then the second thing I want you to do is that I have uploaded a theory outline that's already completed for person-centered therapy. So I want you to take a look at that outline, because that is an example of what I expect from the outline assignments. This one is done for you, but I think this is a great example for future outline assignments that I'm going to ask you to do, sort of like what I'm asking for or what I'm looking for. So feel free to use this person-centered therapy outline for future assignments, or certainly when you're going to be doing different assignments asking you to compare and contrast different types of therapies later on in the course. But also keep it handy too for the outline assignments that are going to show up in future weeks. This is a great sort of template that sort of shows you where I'm coming from and what I expect. So that's just kind of a quick primer that I wanted to give you all for person-centered therapy, and to understand a little bit of the intricacies of what this therapy is all about. For this week, once again, no official assignments, but please read the portion of the textbook that I asked you to read, and make sure to watch that example video of person-centered therapy in action, and just keep a quick tally of how many reflections you see. And I'd love for you just to get a sense of what this type of therapy really looks like in action. Once again, if you have any questions, email me. Let me know. I'm happy to get back in touch with you. But other than that, thank you very much for taking a peek at my video, and best of luck with understanding person-centered therapy this week. Take care. Talk to you soon.